OBS script, tapos restore down, OBS script, OBS mute, then sige, OBS mute, sige, wait lang, okay na, okay na, sige na. Oo, mamaya, di kasi mamaya, nagpe-prepare lang. Prepare lang ako sa opening remarks. Stop. Stop yung vid. Ito yung problem ko. Babalik ako after.
Oh. Alis-alis ka eh. Gusto mo sa...
Before we start, I would like to run a few reminders. We would like to request everyone to turn off their mic to avoid disruption, and we encourage you to turn on your camera during discussion and change your name into your or name where you belong to.
Ako naman kasi nagani.
Underscore your surname. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions to our speakers by sending it into the chat box here in Zoom. For our viewers on Facebook Live, you can drop your questions in the live chat and we will try to address them all at the end of the speaker's presentation. We will also be sending the attendance link at the end of the event, so please stick around until then.
identity. Ay. I mean, wag mo split screen. Ay, Diyos ko. Zoom lang. Dapat kita ang live. Okay. Matagal to. Ang mabagal nga. To my colleagues in UE International Studies Society. Yeah. Sige. Malinaw yan. Ay, Diyos ko. Kabahan ako. Bumubulong kasi sa live. Oh, sorry.
we start, I would like to run a few reminders again. We would like to request everyone to turn off your mic to avoid disruption, and we encourage you to turn on your camera during discussion and change your name into your org name where you belong to, underscore your surname. You'll have the opportunity to ask questions to our speakers by sending it into the chat box here in Zoom. For our viewers on Facebook Live, you can drop your questions in the live chat and we will try to address them all at the end of the speaker's presentation. We will also be sending the attendance link at the end of the event, so please stick around until then.
We would like to recognize the presence of our speaker, Dr. Adiong. Good morning po. While we wait for the other participants to join our Zoom conference, we would like to interview some of the participants today about their expectation for the first webinar organized by UE ISang. Okay? Let us interview Miss Mariela Toledo. Kindly turn on your camera and mic. While we wait for the other participants to join our Zoom conference, we would like to interview some of the participants today about their expectation for the first webinar organized by UE ISang. Let us interview Miss Mariela Toledo. Are you there?
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Atiela. So what are your expectations for the first webinar organized by UE ISang?
Ngayon, good morning to all. And ina-expect ko naman na syempre magiging fruitful siya, meaningful, especially super relevant nung topic natin for this day's webinar kasi 'di ba maano natin siya, magagamit natin siya as our additional knowledge. And I hope na I am looking forward din sa speaker natin kasi ayun, mga iyan sa mga naging prominent na alumni natin. And syempre doon yung recognition to the ISO officers kasi pinagpuyatan nila to, pinaghirapan nila, and hindi naman biro yung paggagawa ng isang webinar. So, ayun.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Toledo, and for your enthusiasm. I agree that this webinar will be a fruitful webinar. This webinar will definitely provide us with the latest findings and knowledge about ASEAN.
Ayan, so before we jumpstart on this event, we would like to acknowledge our partner organizations. in cooperation with UE Association of Broadcasting Students, UE Political Science Society, LPU Foreign Service Club, and Xavier University Ateneo Diplomatic Corps. In cooperation with UE Political Science and LPU Foreign Service Club, and of course, special thanks to UE Association of Broadcasting Students and Xavier University Ateneo Diplomatic Corps.
We would like to greet everyone a pleasant Saturday morning, and we warmly welcome you to the first event of the International Studies Society with our partner organization. My name is Ralph Matthew Samon.
And I am Ivany Fernandez. We have anticipated long enough for this day to come right, and the long wait is over. Before anything else, did you know that this is a special day as we held the very first event of the International Studies Society? We are looking forward to bringing you this year from different horizons and a fruitful year, as the International Studies Society has prepared different well-thought forums just for you. So stay tuned to our upcoming events.
For our first webinar, we will be deepen our understanding of ASEAN, or Association of Southeast Asian Nations. And this webinar will dissect about the regional integration by having consistency on the sense of community and a sense of identity, as well as emphasize the Philippines' role for greater push for solidarity among ASEAN member states in the face of the ever-increasing geopolitical risk and contemporary issues.
To formally open the program, let us call Mr. Eros Vincent Oxela to lead the prayer, followed by the national anthem.
Okay, let's bow our head and feel the presence of the Lord. Father God in heaven, we thank you for the opportunity to gather this day. May everything we do begin with your inspiration and continue with your help. We ask your guidance throughout this meeting, that all of our thoughts and actions would reflect your holy will, and that you would grant us the grace to love you and our neighbors more perfectly. We pray in Jesus' name, Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
May Mr. Charles Loren Bautista, the project head of ISang ASEAN, for Thank you, Mr. Baptista, for those wonderful remarks. I agree that ASEAN could be a great regional body by a virtue of a strong regional community and a reimagined listen. Moving forward, this will undoubtedly provide us and our speakers with audience with the idea of a better Filipino affinity. With ASEAN, the Philippines to call greater call for cooperation at its geopolitical base our national interest to the regional body.
Before we formally introduce our speaker, I know some of our participants, especially the IS students, know him or at least heard of his name. So since he is an alumni of the UEAB International Studies and awarded by the university as one of the 75 outstanding alumni, to properly introduce him, he works on interdisciplinary research between Islam and international relations and explores the Bangsamoro Society as he head the Policy Research and Legal Services of the Bangsamoro Parliament, a founder and project leader of UPCIDS Decolonial Studies Program. Lastly, he is elected at large in the South and Southeast Asia and the Pacific Representative, Global South Caucus International Studies Association. These are just one of the few achievements of our speaker today. Let us welcome Dr. Nassef Adiong.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? All right. Thanks for inviting me in this fine occasion of yours as you would like to explore the ASEAN. Just want to share screen because we actually had in the beginning of the program the Philippine national anthem. So just want to share with everyone that there's actually an ASEAN anthem which was concocted, I think, this year, if I'm not mistaken. As you can see, the lyrics is called The ASEAN Way. So because I can't, message everyone, so I'll just have to share screen with you. You can see it here that this is the lyrics: raise our flag high, sky, embrace the pride in our heart, bonded as one, look in out to the world for peace and for prosperity, and dare to dream that we can share together for ASEAN. We dare to dream to care for. It's the way of ASEAN. So just to I'll stop share screen and then I'll go with you to share with you the ASEAN anthem. It was uploaded this year, April 26, 2021. I'll just share the sound so that everyone can hear it. So this is the ASEAN way.
Raise our flag high, sky high, embrace the pride in our heart. ASEAN, we are bonded as one, looking out to the world. For peace our goal from the very start, and prosperity to last. We
I'll stop the share screen and as you can see when you listen and take a look at the musical instruments that were used in the ASEAN anthem, which is we didn't hear are rooted from Southeast Asian countries. We all know that there are certain musical instruments that our ancestors have produced. What we have seen or heard are musical instruments from Europe, from Western countries, as it was used in the ASEAN anthem. So that's one critique that I found, that we didn't use our own very own musical instruments, the musical way that Southeast Asian had. And aside from that, probably since I'm actually surprised that not only International Studies Society have focused on the theme ASEAN, because if you're going to experience going to our airports or going to other airports of ASEAN member countries, there seems to be a lack of knowledge for Filipinos that there are ASEAN lane. And Filipinos don't tend to go to the ASEAN lane because they thought that it's for diplomats. It's actually, if you go to other countries in Southeast Asia, there are actually ASEAN lane where you can go there and then just, have a smooth way of transacting, of entering the border using your passports because you are a member of the ASEAN. It's also similar when you go to Europe, that they also have other foreign countries, and then they also have the citizens, and then they also have the EU lane, which is the European Union lane, where other EU member states citizens can go there so that they could have a smooth transaction of entering the border. It's also similar. So I found it quite ironic because we Filipinos tend to not feel to be kind of a part of a member of ASEAN if you go into this kind of individual experiences that we've had, not only, but also if you're going to interview the public, Filipino public, if they're even knowledgeable of ASEAN. So there is actually no orientation, not even in the primary education, secondary education, that they don't have ASEAN subjects. But I think that in Thailand, even in other countries such as Malaysia and Indonesia, they have ASEAN subjects, introducing ASEAN to their young generation so that they would inculcate and be knowledgeable of ASEAN. But we don't have that in our educational system. So how can we speak of first the theme that we've had here, which is the ASEAN identity, if for us, even Filipinos, have no prior knowledge of ASEAN? We don't even go to ASEAN lane in the airports because we thought that it's for different people, and also other ASEAN benefits that you can have as a member of ASEAN, as the organization itself. So just to probably orient people here, I'm going to share a screen, a 5-minute video that was produced by Heinrich Böll Stiftung Foundation in Germany. I think that it's quite, in terms of abstract and presentation, it's quite neat. So I'm going to share a screen so that we would have a kind of understanding, grounding on ASEAN. Just to check if can everyone hear?
What is ASEAN? The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN for short, is an association that today consists of 10 Southeast Asian states. In 1967, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines and Singapore founded ASEAN. The aim was to improve economic, political, and social cooperation, and also to balance political conflicts between these countries that existed as a consequence of decolonization. During Cold War, ASEAN members wanted to contain the influence of communism in the region. Times changed. Old enemies became new partners, and in the second half of the 1990s, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Cambodia joined ASEAN. The collapse of the USSR, the founding of the World Trade Organization, and a financial crisis in Asia prompted members to deepen their relations and adapt to the new situation. In the 2000s, free trade agreements were concluded with India, China, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. In the future, the entire region will be merged into one large free trade zone. Since 2001, the ASEAN Summit takes place annually. It is a meeting of the heads of state and government where current problems are discussed and solutions are worked out. In 2008, the ASEAN Charter came into force, giving the association the status of a legal person. Principles of non-intervention and consensual decision-taking remained unchanged by the Charter. Decisions are generally made by consensus. No member can be forced to something. As a result, the group rarely appears to be closed. Nowadays. Today, ASEAN is based on 3 pillars. As a political and security community to ensure peace, as an economic community with a strong domestic market, and as a social and cultural community, including a common identity. Challenges and solutions. ASEAN faces a number of social and environmental challenges. Countries such as Vietnam or the Philippines are particularly vulnerable to climate change and already feel its impact today. Problem: coal production. Nevertheless, member states plan to meet the energy demand by making primarily use of climate-damaging coal. Indonesia plans to build 117 new coal-fired power plants by 2025. Myanmar invests in gigantic hydroelectric power plants and coal. Laos builds dams on the Mekong. The result is that Vietnam loses water in the Mekong Delta. However, fossil fuels, for example, are not necessary to cover the lack of energy. Renewable energy sources ranging from biomass to solar energy and wind power have enormous potentials in the region. They too would promote the local economy and provide sustainable jobs. Problem: large areas of precious rainforest are burnt down for palm oil plantations and cattle feed cultivation all over Indonesia. The smog of these fires covers large parts of Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia. Pollution continues, even though in 2003 a smog agreement in the ASEAN came into force, which should reduce forest fires, environmental degradation, and air pollution. As such problems cross borders, ASEAN must tackle them in a joint effort and think beyond borders. This can be done, for example, by taking up the suggestions made by CSOs, civil society organizations, aiming at installing a 4th pillar, the environmental pillar. It must ensure that the ecological limits are taken into account in the growth debate. Only in case civil society is informed transparently and gets much more involved, acting free from state repression, social and environmental justice can arise. Serve people rather than profit.
So just I stopped the share screen there. As you can see that there is somehow a real challenge for ASEAN, which was defined and also stated in the video by the foundation. Just a second, I need to charge my laptop. One moment. Okay, there. So we have the one thing that it was not presented in the video was the history, the background, how ASEAN was formed. There were actually other associations that different member states, some member states in the present day ASEAN had tried to develop and establish. The first one is the CETO, if you can remember in your classes, which is the Southeast Asia Economic and Security Treaty. Which it also failed. And then aside from that, we also have the ASA, the Association of Southeast Asia. It was also failed because of the profound conflict between Philippines and Malaysia during the time. And then aside from that, we also have the Mafilindo, Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia, and also the BIMP IAGA, which also all of them failed. But in 1967, the five members had, as a response to Cold War between the United States and the Soviets, that they remained non-partisan to these two giants, superpowers in the times of their cold conflict. So they established the ASEAN, which became 10 member countries, and hopefully 11th, which is the, if I'm not mistaken, it's not Asia, but the other one. Forget the 11th. Can you remember which is the 11th? Could be this 11th member country. The one who visited the Philippines way back in 2000. Anyhow, it's actually in Indonesia that gained independence from the Indonesian state. That could be an 11th member. So you can see that there are things when we talk about identity. Actually, identity is quite problematic. You can see that identity is one of the sources of conflict. You can take a look at World War II, the Aryan race identity of the Germans under the Nazi Party, political party of Adolf Hitler, which had, committed genocide to millions of people. You can also take a look way back in different world wars. Not only world wars, if you can go back here in the Philippines, and if we raise our own identity, that would actually kind of provide a platform and a leverage to conflicts. If we're going to, emphasize regionalistic identities, Cavite, Cebuano, Davao, Bangsamoro, Cordillera, that would provide kind of disintegration to a centralized form of leadership in the Philippines. What I think that we need to discuss is the capabilities, the shared values and norms and cultures. I would say multiculturalism that is quite important in an archipelagic country in the Philippines. How a country that is composed of hundreds of languages, hundreds of cultural expressions, of normative realities, can become one, because we always think of beyond identity politics. We think of what are the potentialities, the capabilities, and the contributions of us as part of the Philippines, that we can contribute to its own development. How can we contribute to our own communities, to our own local communities, to achieve health development, or social welfare development? So it's quite a daunting task for us, especially that what I have been assigned to is to provide a decolonized perspective of ASEAN. That's a quite insurmountable challenge, because ASEAN is an organization that was developed because of modern times, because of colonization. It is a post-colonial result, or product, which had the elements of what I call the 1935 Montevideo Duties of State, the elements of nation state. A nation state is not a resultant of our ancestors, of our lineage. Our sovereignty, our idea and understanding of sovereignty is quite different from the European sovereignty. We all know of these conflicts in Europe. We all know of this, the 1111 Treaty of Concord, the 1555 Peace of Augsburg, the 1648 Peace of Westphalia, and you go over to many treaties that were established because out of conflicts in Europe, and out of those conflicts, they have this idea of sovereignty that is quite different from the way Southeast Asia think of sovereignty. The European, actually, the modernity's understanding of sovereignty in Europe is actually quite different from pre-modern European understanding of sovereignty. The European pre-modern understanding is quite linked to, let's say, if you all know St. Thomas Aquinas, we have that a university that was attributed to St. Thomas Aquinas, the University of Santo Tomas. So in his Summa Theologica, and you can also take a look that St. Thomas Aquinas was also influenced by many pre-modern intellectuals such as Aristotle. We also have Ibn Rushd or Averroes, a very prominent Muslim thinker, and also Moses Maimonides, a Jewish, he is referred as Ibn Maimun, the son of Maimun. He is referred to be the giant Jewish political theologian thinker. So all of this of these giant thinkers were influentials to the works of St. Thomas Aquinas, and their understanding of sovereignty is quite different. There is a preponderating similarity of sovereignty between Islamic and Christian or Christendom. It all boils down to common good or public welfare. In Arabic, masla and istisla, or public welfare and public interest for the Islamic world. And for the Christendom, the Christianity, it's actually common good. That's their understanding of sovereignty as bestowed by divine revelations. But because of the warring kingdoms in Europe, they have understood sovereignty as geographically fixed territorial jurisdiction. So they call it, their understanding of sovereignty is very territorial. That's the reason why it's called territorial sovereignty. And that's how their understanding of sovereignty was compared to our ancestors, where sovereignty resides from the mobility of the leadership. So whenever our leader, or let's say the Raja or the Sultan or the Datu, would go from one place to another, or the Babaylan would go from one place to another, point A to point B locations, uh, it's where the sovereignty revolves. So it's a mobile sovereignty for Southeast Asia, especially for the Philippines. It's not a fixed geographical location or a territorial bordered understanding of sovereignty. So with 2021 marking the 500-year commemoration of the first, I think, circumnavigation of the world, comes additional impetus in the need to revisit the beginnings and impacts of cultural encounters that contributed to the contemporary configuration of human knowledge systems. So what I'm thinking of decoloniality thinking and decolonial praxis is within the ambits of human knowledge systems on the level of political, economic, social, cultural, and ideological, actually. So it is quite fitting to provide what we call a critical analysis that is often used with the reference of continuing and often deleterious processes, and including the conditions as well, and attitudes that brought about by the colonial period, which I think is inextricably linked to the epistemology of modernity. And when I say modernity, I'm speaking of Western modernity, not the Shmuel Eichenstadt's multiple modernities. So I only think of this notion of Western modernity that have actually influenced non-European societies or non-Euro-Anglican Pax Anglican societies. You can take a look at different modernities, but when we speak of Western modernity, you have nationalism, you have capitalism. This is a very big word, not only a big word, but it's actually the one that have contributed to the wide gap between the rich and poor. This economic system that we actually adopted, called capitalist system. And we actually do have our own economic systems during the time. It's just that I don't understand why our post-colonial elites have circumvented and also and adopted a capitalistic nature of life. So these are aspects of when we think of modernity or Western modernity, interrogating the coloniality that involves aspects of Western modernity in post-colonial states, and also involves critical engagement with colonial era text. You can also include collective memory and the use of both colonial and local languages as well. There are certain aspects that I'd like to mention here in my notes, the aspects of Western modernity that actually envelops the global South knowledge systems and continues to expand within its domain. There are actually 6 aspects of Western modernity. The first one is the naturalization and the universal scale, which means that European experience as manifestation of universal process, methodological nationalism, such as, for example, myth of isolated success stories of industrialization and enlightenment, paved the way actually for what we call the impacts, global impacts of capitalistic system, making it as universal movement and a word for non-European states, as this is one aspect. So there is a tendency to universalize everything that is coming from Europe or coming from America, United States. So these are one aspect of Western modernity. The second aspect of Western modernity is the othering, the marginalization, and the problematization of what I call deviance, which means that there is a developed self versus underdeveloped other. And when you speak of other, you might think of the one of the literature written by Edward Said, The Orientalism. You can take a look at that, how the Arabs or the Middle Eastern or the Oriental world were marginalized, and it was succumbed to colonization and to interference by Western forces. So this is the underdeveloped other as a kind of continuation of colonial world view based on a transformation of geocultural differences into historical stages, norm and deviance and problem in the South, and knowledge in the North. So that's what I call that's one aspect of Western modernity. The third one is the promise of development as geopolitical instrument legitimizing intervention, capitalist foreign economic actors, and existing colonial division of labor. These are very challenging and quite hard to surmise because it was really is what we are now practicing as a kind of a cultural norm for Filipinos that we have adopted, especially capitalism and the existing colonial labor division. The fourth aspect of Western modernity is the hierarchization of knowledge, which includes cosmologies, cultures, and values. So for them, there is a certain hierarchy of knowledge. At the epitome, at the higher stage of knowledge, it's for them it's rational knowledge or science. And then at a second part for them is the philosophy, the Western philosophy. And then down to the bottom line in the Western knowledge systems are religious or divine revealed, what I call revealed knowledge, religious knowledge to be exact. But for the Oriental world, especially for Islamic, even for the Southeast Asia, the knowledge we don't have actually a hierarchization of knowledge. Everything revolves around as we see them fit, especially how our ancestors, the foreboding generations in the previous and to the present, that we take into account as knowledge system, especially how we view the environment, how we view, and actually this kind of knowledge, which is divine, religious, or let's say, even you can call it paganistic or whatever knowledge it is, the knowledge of our ancestors, it was categorized by Western scholars as myth, as mythical knowledge system, or it's not even a knowledge system, but it's just a myth. So that's how they actually look at our pre-colonial knowledge is. So the last two aspects of Western modernity is the depoliticization of inequality, for example, conflicts and exploitation, technocratic solutions, or helping the poor without hurting the rich. And the last one is on gender, the masculinism and gendered knowledge systems by privileging rationality, productivity, and mastery over nature. Remember that we don't have this kind of gendered knowledge system. For them, it's masculine. We don't have that kind of masculine feminism knowledge, especially that, for example, in the Philippines, it's primarily matrilineal. Our community at the time is not page. It's more on matrilineal system. That's the reason why most of our um, leaders at the time could be a female most of the time, and or a babaylan could be a male as a babaylan but dressed as a female. So the gender in Southeast Asia is more fluid compared to this these aspects of Western modernity. So what do we have to do here when we think of providing a kind of decolonized perspective, despite that the ASEAN has been built based on aspects of Western modernity? So what we need to do as students is to look at a decolonial oriented research, meaning that when we think of doing research uh, uh, in our lives as students, we really need to look at ways of our own mindset, of our own mind, of our own schema, and how our mind could contribute to our own communities. That is the reason why the educational system in the Philippines is pretty much colonized, meaning the disciplines in the educational system in the Philippines were patterned out from the U.S. educational system. The even the disciplines that we are learning, political science, anthropology, international relations. One thing, international relations is highly Western centric. It only read Western literature. It only reads Western white male authors. In theories, in praxis, you can take a look at. I don't understand why. I think in FISO, I quite developed the understanding that when we think about the world, the Weltanschauungs, our worldviews as Filipino scholar or as a Filipino student, we need to look at our own conceptual framework, our own conceptualizations, our own Filipino authors. So we need to really base our thinking about the world and affairs about the world based on local knowledge production system or knowledge production and knowledge creation and knowledge development that is based on our own normative self experiences, not only in terms of experientialities, but also in terms of our own philosophical understanding, the ontological and epistemological understanding of us being a Filipino, being Cebuano, being from Northern Luzon, Cordillera, or being a Kapampangan, or being Davaoenyo, or from Bangsamoro. So let's take a look at that and how would that contribute to international studies. So we need to digress. We actually need to digress from Western canons and build our own Filipino canons or Global South or Southeast Asian canons on international studies. So we have to stop these repetitions of always, oh, there are only realism, liberalism, social constructivism. That is even sometimes you can only learn realism because most, if not all, of those who are teaching international relations tend to focus on realism. Which is not really a reflection of our own society, of our own community. So when we think of decolonial oriented research across knowledge systems, it should transposed from religion, philosophy, mathematics, physics, health, engineering, arts, and all systemic sciences. When I call it systemic sciences, it's transborders the Western modernity's compartmentalization of knowledge systems. This is actually the aspect of what we call Western modernities, that they compartmentalize knowledge systems into humanities, social, physical sciences. That is quite unique in the Western world, but in our knowledge systems, no, it's very fluid. Language, culture, religion, philosophy, and all of these modern disciplines can be, can be read, can be learned uh, uh, um, um, simultaneously. So this is the unique selling point of this decolonial oriented research. So all knowledge systems for me are science in their own ontological and epistemological ways, ways that provide equal value of importance to the good life and better appreciation and respect of multi-perspective worldviews. So it's not only the Western worldview that should dominate other worldviews. It should be a multi-perspective worldviews that is equal, that has equal access to all knowledge systems. So this is what I call the importance of all of these knowledge systems in relation to our theme ASEAN must always contribute to quote unquote to the good life, how it would better the community. So that's the reason I think for us, remember when I become the Director of Policy Research and Legal Services of the Bangsamoro Parliament, it come to my realization that that we really need to help the community, really need to assist the community, our studies as students or as faculty, because if we only do research that only academics or only those who are members of the academe can understand, there's no sense of that research. The research must help develop the communal problem, address the communal problems besetting our own societies. That's, I think, the essential essence and significance of a research. So, and even writing a paper, there is no sense of, oh, I'm just going to write a paper for so that it would contribute to my promotion as a professor, but no one will read your paper. So you need to publish that could be accessible to all multiple publics, read by different sectors, that and also probably at least access provided access to policymakers so that that there is a sense of policy making in your research that would actually directly address communal problems. And I think there are so many problems besetting ASEAN, as we have seen in the video, especially environmental problems. So that's one thing. So for me, there are no hierarchies, polar opposites, or abysmal line that divide Western, Euro, Anglo-centric from Oriental or Global South knowledge systems such as in Indian, Chinese, Islamic, or indigenous, among others. For me, all knowledge systems must be recognized as legitimate for and valid in generating new and innovative knowledge. So the state or the polity must provide investments and resources equal to all knowledge systems. So the state or our government should not only devote itself to health, engineering, sciences, but it almost also invest in all aspects and all dimensions of research and development, both humanities, religion, philosophy, social sciences, as well as others as well. So in order for us to have a good standing of knowledge production, knowledge creation, and knowledge development. But unfortunately, if you're going to take a look at the UNDP statistics, compared to other Southeast Asian countries, the Philippines is in the bottom line of providing an allocation of its percentage of its GDP percentage to research and development. For UNDP, the benchmark that would somehow provide a good standing and positionality for research and development is that the GDP of a certain country must must allocate its 1% of its own GDP towards the development of R&D funding. But if you're going to take a look at the statistics, it's 0.0001116 is the GDP allocation of Philippines to research and development. So what's of even exploring kaalaman at karunungan when even our state is not even investing on it? Take a look at Malaysia, Thailand, even Singapore, of course, Singapore, it's beyond 1% of their GDP that is allocated for research and development. Take a look at UK Parliament, the British Parliament, almost 1.17%, or if I could still remember, 38.7 billion British pounds, or equivalent to 2.5 trillion pesos, that is all allocated only for research and development funding. So what are the main important points that that we could have a dialogue with the global north knowledge systems that we don't tend to but before I discuss that, there are actually important core of these Western or global North knowledge systems. For the main important questions that to be asked are this. In terms of knowledge production, who has the right to research? Who does research and whom? Who benefits? Who is used as object of knowledge production? It's not only there shouldn't be academic bias on knowledge production, especially if you're going to write a paper. It's not only the academics that are the source of knowledge. You can take a look at the elders of a certain community. If you're going to take an ethnographic research, do an ethnographic research of the Mangyans, Tibolis, or of the Badjaos, you really need to take into consideration that they're also part of the authorship of your paper, because they are the ones of the source of knowledge. So if you're going to present your paper in the international conferences or even national conferences, you have to always put them as co-authors, those that you have access and obtain knowledge from, and even invite them in these conferences. It's not only for academics, but also for those who got where those knowledge came from. So invite those Mangyans, those Badjaos in this conference so that they could also say something about it. It's that we shouldn't exploit them. So another aspect of global North knowledge systems is academic imperialism. Another question for the global South or for Filipino authors, that there is a trend of academic imperialism or the political economy of knowledge systems in the world, that it only reflects the Western political economy. So whenever we from the South, from global South, supply the data, persons in the North, global North, they write the theory and make a career out of it. So that is quite disadvantage for us, because we only provide data, and this is one part of the survey that we done in 2017 with FISO and TRIP survey, the Teaching, Research, and International Policy at the College of William and Mary's in the United States, that there is a tendency for the global south, for Filipinos, that we only provide data, but we don't have the means to even write our own theory, our own concept, or make our own method. You always look at, oh, what's the appropriate method for this? Look at what has the Western academe provided. So we really need to think of how to decolonize methodological system in our research and our thinking also about the world, in our normative live realities. So what I think that we can look at and bring about as we think of potentialities, capabilities, and contributions to the ASEAN as Filipinos is that we need to giving credit or acknowledge the contributions of the concepts of the methods coming out from the Philippines, from ASEAN member countries, and also provide what has been the concepts all along, and the knowledge systems in different member countries of ASEAN. We also need to giving back by presenting this, what I've said a while ago, presenting results in accessible format and language to those who provided information or support in the process of knowledge production. Meaning, when we write papers, we need to devoid from academics or even those are interested in legality or legalist writing way. We need to use language that is quite accessible and understandable by multiple publics. So what's the point if you're going to, write in an academic way when only those who can understand are academics or people in your own field? So you really need to provide a clear, not clear, not so vague language that is accessible and understandable by all stakeholders in the community if you want to promote and contribute something to address a certain communal problem. And of course, giving space. So can this research be done? Can this research be written? Can this lecture be given also by someone from the elders of the community or someone from non-academics? So to give back, to give credit, to give space to the colonial agents and stakeholders situated in the global south in ASEAN is about to cultivate, develop, and distribute one's own, I think what I say, homegrown research and knowledge systems in the world. So we need to take a look at these 5 points and then I'll conclude. The first one is the centering knowledge and knowledge production from the global north or from the west towards the global south domain, meaning it is about time that Americans, Europeans cite us, reference us, our works. They need to reference, they need to to read our works, our papers. It's not only about us that we always tend to read their papers, read their publications. It's about time for these Americans, these Europeans to read and refer to us and cite us in their works. Second, we need to disinvest from citational. Disinvesting from citational power structures to building one's own citational infrastructure system and promoting locally based journals and book publishers. This is what I mentioned a while ago, that disinvest from citational power, because there is actually what I call citation cartel in sciences. You cite me, I cite you. That's the reason why mostly in sciences field, citations is very high compared to social science and humanities. So we need to promote and invest in our own citational infrastructure system by promoting our own journals and publications. Third, which I mentioned a while in the very instance of this talk, is to digress, or we need to digressing from the Western canons to highlighting one's own homegrown knowledge sources while in dialogue with those canons. We're not actually rejecting, we're not rejecting Karl Marx. We're not rejecting Emile Durkheim. We're not rejecting uh, uh, um, um, Hobbes or uh, Kenneth Waltz. We're not rejecting these Western authors, these international relations canons, but we need to highlight and build our own canons of international relations that is based on Filipino or our own local or our own communal experiences and knowledge system. So fourth one is making the curriculum and learning materials colorful, not white author dominated. So here we are. We need to provide a curriculum and learning materials that encapsulate and incorporate Filipino authors or Southeast Asian authors if we need to do kind of understanding as we view Southeast Asia. And of course, diminish hegemonic voices of gatekeepers while magnifying the other marginalized ones. In Philippine academia, there are actually gatekeepers that they think that, oh, they gatekeep, they hold the knowledge in international relations or the knowledge in political science, because it's the same perpetuating repetition of white male authorship in their gatekeeping system. So for us as the new generation of IR scholars, of international studies scholars, it's about time that we provide and magnify us, since at this moment we are the marginalized othered students and scholars. So I think I'll stop here and looking forward to our open forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful discussion, Dr. Adiong. And now we will proceed to our Q&A event and take some time for our questions now. Just a reminder for our Zoom attendees, you can enter the question in the chat box. And for our Facebook Live audience, you can drop your question via live chat. So let us start our Q&A event with the first question. Ivan.
Ayan. So for the first question po, Dr. Adiong, from Mr. Baptista, the question is, should ASEAN take the multilateralist approach in order to find ASEAN identity?
Thank you for that question. I think ASEAN has been doing a multilateral relations. Remember that it's not only between states, but also between ASEAN and other member states. And they also had multilateral relations with other non-ASEAN countries such as China, Japan, India, and Australia. It's really important for the Philippines to have this kind of multilateral diplomacy, not only to ASEAN member countries, but also to our neighboring countries in the fatherland, such as Japan, Indonesia, India, and other prominent countries that can contribute in the good life of the Philippines.
Thank you, Dr. Adiong. For the second question, should they take within themselves?
You can call me Nassef. You don't have to call me with the title. Just Nassef. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. For our second question, should they take within themselves to find their identity? Why or why not?
As I mentioned a while ago, there are many problems if we're going to espouse identities. and I mentioned to you that it's somehow the source of conflicts. What we need to focus on is to develop or find and explore our potentialities, our capabilities, and capacities to bring about, to provide something, to contribute something to the good life of our own community. That is, I think, the most important one than looking out, oh, I am LGBT, part of the LGBT identity. Oh, I am this, oh, I am that, I am the boss, I am let's say I'm the president or I am this one. It's not about who we are, but it's about what can we contribute something to uh, uh, to the community, our profession as IS students, what our contribution as IS students in our to develop the good life in our own community is the most important one. So we when we do something that can contribute to our own barangays, it's the starting point of us being recognized by the community. It's not about finding an identity for us, our identity, but it's about what can we bring about and contribute to the community that would acknowledge our own identity.
Ayan. So, from one of our audience po sa Facebook Live, may nagtanong po, is there a need right now for ASEAN to become closer than ever as they face the surmountable challenges of the globalized world?
There is what? If there's a need to what?
Is there a need right now for ASEAN to become closer than ever as they face the surmountable challenges of the globalized world po?
Yes. You can see that if you saw the video and if since I think you have a subject on ASEAN, from 1967, they only started their ASEAN summit in 2001. So because what they have been doing is talk shop. It's like a conference shops. They only go and then talk something, and there it is. It's a talk shop actually from 1967. So they started this ASEAN summit in 2001 to actually address certain problems in ASEAN, and then only in 2008 that they've signed a charter. Can you imagine from 1967 until 2008 ish? That they have signed a charter to legally bind themselves, and look at this. Only 2021 that they have this anthem, the ASEAN Way, 2021, and they wanted to follow the footsteps of European Union. Well, we don't have to look at them. But in principle, we can refer to them, but we don't have to follow their footsteps because we have our own different environment, different community. And we should look at the ethical values that are shared, the norms that are shared. So in this way, then we can think of putting a closure among us. But take a look. If you travel to ASEAN countries, no Filipinos would ever go to ASEAN lane in the airports. Can you imagine that? So if you want to have a more closer view and relations among ASEAN countries, it should start from us. So we need to, institutionalize ASEAN subjects in our education in the formative years of our learning. We also need to have probably ASEAN TV channels, ASEAN restaurants, So to promote, oh, these are the ASEAN food. So we would tend to have a more familiarization as an individual, so that by the time when we go to the airport, when there is no one lining up in the ASEAN lane, it's us Filipinos who will start going there and go to the ASEAN lane.
Yes, I certainly agree with Sir Nassef that I also use ASEAN Day back then when we went to Singapore because po yung sa ASEAN Day was a short line lang po, parang wala po pumipila. We take that opportunity po na pumila na rin po doon. And certainly, mabilis naman po yung pila sa immigration. And for the fourth question po, what is the biggest challenge to ASEAN identity building as China's sphere of influence is concerned? Is China a threat to ASEAN identity?
First and foremost, it's difficult to even have ASEAN identity. Even Filipino identity is quite difficult. How can we have Filipino identity when we do have several cultures, norms, Cordillera, Cebuano, Kapampangan, Davoeño, Bangsamoro, even the term national interest by American scholars, I find it very, very lame to even espouse national interest, because we all have interests. We all have communal interests. What's the interest for Northern Luzon? What's the interest for Metro Manila? So we think that there are only not three. There are national interests. That there are interests that is in the scale of national. So those are very, very vague for me when I read this literature, and we shouldn't think other countries as a threat. We should all believe first in the cooperation, because there's only one Earth. There's only one Earth. There's only one Earth, only resources, very limited resources. If we're going to take a look at many literature, with this amount of obtaining Earth resources to sustain life for about a decade or so, we would need at least 10 Earth to sustain and maintain a growing human population. You can see that there are many have been extinct from animals, from other species, just to sustain human life at the expense of other species. So we need to think beyond. We need to think about those thoughts, that if we need to sustain this growing Filipino population, 110 million, we really need to have good cooperation with other countries, and not look at them with a realist mindset. Oh, we always think about security. Oh, we always think about real politics. Oh, we always think about powers. And this is, I think, the problem of international relations, that we couldn't go beyond power politics. We can't go beyond security. We can go beyond realism or realism mindset. So we need to think about these things if we need to maintain and sustain life for about 100 years. So cooperation is the key, and understanding, because we're all humans with same organs, with same, if you take away or remove your skin, it's the same muscles, the same color of the muscles that we will see in human species.
So,
Thank you.
thank you din po, sir. So, one of our participants here in Zoom po asked question from Mr. Abru. I have a question regarding your perspective of Western academic imperialism. With perspective of decolonizing the ASEAN academe, if you have experienced Western resistance, and how have you dealt with it?
Well, I haven't experienced Western resisting to Western literature, Western authors in the ASEAN. You go to Singapore, you go to Malaysia. Actually, the very first network in decolonial studies that was established was by me in Southeast Asia. So when I have talks with Said Farid Alatas of NUS, when I talk to other scholars in Indonesia, they're very, very surprised. Oh, there's this decolonial studies research network in the Philippines, which I started. And it's one of the decolonial research agenda of FISO, of Philippine International Studies Organization. And now, when I started decolonial DSRN, Decolonial Studies Research Network in 2019, I am now in gala, in joy that there are many programs in UP Diliman, in other universities in Mindanao that are now starting looking and exploring decolonial knowledge, decolonial concepts, decolonial methods. They're now looking at ways of their own community to think about and address certain problems. And not only in the Philippines, because now I am always being invited by Indonesian academics, Indonesian universities. They're also more interested in decoloniality. So you can see that there are now decolonial movements in Southeast Asia, spearheaded by Philippines, now by Indonesia. So very, very glad for that. Great for that. And even in NUS, with my talks with the Department of Malay Studies, they even have started this even before. It's just that I'm the one who tried to institutionalize it in the Philippines.
Thank you, sir. For the next question, could you compare its past and its present, and how does ASEAN assess if it needs to consolidate or intervene?
Well, there are certain progress, of course, if you're going to look at the past and now of ASEAN. Remember, I said that they now have this annual summit. They've signed their charter in 2008, and they even have this ASEAN Way as ASEAN anthem. It's going there gradually of having of making it as one ASEAN community, and hopefully they could also have ASEAN currency. I'm not sure if they will be there, if they will be able to do that in the next decade or so. So there is certain progress actually in coming together. And in terms of intervention, this is quite different to think. It's actually a challenge because not many of those ASEAN countries would intervene to other member state of ASEAN because of their Treaty of Amity. So it's actually a non-interference treaty that all member states had to follow, even if there are EJK, extrajudicial killings, even if there are genocide among the Rohingya people, or even what's happening in Burma or in Myanmar. So it's really difficult for a state, especially if that state has many problems on its own, economic, political, and social. So I think one thing that ASEAN success, I would say a success for ASEAN, is the maintenance of regional security or peace. There haven't been no wars or conflicts between states in the ASEAN membership. That's one thing that I could say a success for ASEAN.
Okay, for our last question from our attaché. There was a survey conducted by PIBS last year, and it acknowledges the Filipinos having the most concern on ASEAN only with the maritime disputes. What could be the other things to be infused in the hearts of the Filipinos to view ASEAN as our partner in development?
I think I've provided an answer for this. What thing to inculcate ASEAN values to Filipinos is start with our own normal lives through education. If we'll have ASEAN primary and secondary education, if we could have ASEAN restaurants or ASEAN that would introduce us of food from especially the Thai food, which I love. One of my favorite delicacies, food is the Thai food. I really love Thai food. So I think those are the things that would start in Filipino be interested on ASEAN, education and culture. Let's start from those two things, culture and education, so that we would have a greater appreciation of ASEAN.
Thank you very much, sir. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. We hope that our webinar's discourse on the decolonized perspective of ASEAN does not come to an end here. We hope that this a worthwhile discussion in this part of ASEAN has imparted you valuable insights. And now, let's proceed to the presentation of Certificate of Appreciation. This Certificate of Appreciation is presented to Dr. Nassef Manabilang Adiong for gracing us with your presence and excellence in the event entitled ISang ASEAN, Testing Unity in Uncertain Global Politics. Given this 27th of November in the year of our Lord, 2021 via Zoom platform. Signed by Ana Marie Atatumo, President of International Studies Society. Professor Amy A. Diesel, Advisor of International Studies Society, and Professor Percival S. Gabriel, Chairman of Department of Social Sciences, Philosophy, and Humanities.
Ayan, syempre hindi magtatapos so wala tayong photo of opportunity with our speaker. So please open your cam. We encourage you to open your cam to take a photo opportunity with our speaker for today. Ready na ba ang lahat? Naka-aura na ba tayo? Okay. Ayan. So, ayun, lahat mostly naka-open na yung cam. So, for our person who will screenshot, please, ready na ba? Okay.
Okay po. So, ready po tayo. So, 1, 2, 3. Good morning! So, next page po. On po natin yung cam natin, guys. So, mga naka-off pa po yung cams. Okay, so again. 1, 2, 3. Smile! So, thank you po.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sir Nassef. And now we would like to call the President of the UE International Studies Society for the closing remarks, Ms. Ana Marie B. Atatumo.
Ayan, good morning. Am I audible po?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good day, everyone. I would like to thank all the people who participated in this wonderful event. All of you taking your time out of your personal, professional, and hectic schedules means a lot to the International Studies Society. As the first installment of ISang ASEAN meets its end, we must not forget how the ASEAN region have its own identity aside from their colonial past and guarantees. To be able to achieve it, we must work hand in hand when it comes to forming a multi-perspective world where people have access on all the knowledge systems. Our country must also establish a more secure and open international relations and a much more progressive research and development, culture, and education as a step towards a connected ASEAN. To our resource speaker, Dr. Adiong, our organization is truly grateful for your presence alongside the fact that you have given us knowledge about the ASEAN region and its identity that we don't usually gather and encounter on a daily basis, and also for answering all our questions about it. To the students and professors who have attended, we hope you have enjoyed and absorbed everything. Thank you and see you again on the second installment of ISang ASEAN, Testing Unity in an Uncertain Global Politics, to be held on the 30th.
Thank you,
very much
everyone.
for those. Thank you,
Yes,
Sarah.
just to
Thank
give you a
very much.
trivia, the
the
ISO logo
ISO logo
was done by me. I was the one who done the ISO logo that you are now using. Even yung magkabaliktad na S, it's actually a swan, which I envisioned at that time. So it was supposed to be a swan kissing magkabaliktad na S. So thank you for again using that logo until now. Bye.
Thank you so much, Sir Nassef. We're so amazed that kayo po pala ang gumawa ng aming gunting logo sa aming organization. Maraming salamat po. And thank you for those wonderful remarks, Miss Atutubo.
Meron na bang isang department? Because I've been promoting a Department of International Studies. Because I don't get the sense why there's history on that. Because history should be one department and one department for international studies, or they have changed it. Is it still, or it's still Department of History and International Studies?
It is still Department of History and International Studies, sir.
Okay. Sige. Bye, everyone.
Ayan. So to formally end end this event, let us sing the UE hymn.
Mantasan ka naming mahal, ilaw sa karimlan. Buhay, lakas, dunong, dangal, pamantasan ka ng bayan. Ang pangalan mo ay manhati at sandigan ka ng pamantasan ang silangan, pamantasan ka naming mahal, pamantasan ka naming mahal, ilaw sa karimlan. Buhay, lakas, dunong, dangal, pamantasan ka ng bayan. Ang pangalan mo ay malhati at sandigan ka ng lahi. pamantasan ng silangan, pamantasan ka namin mahal.
So, we would like to thank your enthusiasm in participating the first part of our event. So we hope that we see you in the second part of this conference as we further the discussion underlying concerns of ASEAN in international politics and its stance in highly geopolitical contentious times. Before you leave, please kindly fill the evaluation form to get your certificate for the event. The link can be seen in the chat box sent by our officers.
Follow UE ISO in all of our social media channels. We'll keep you updated on our social media page. We warmly encourage you to send us a message if you have any suggestion for the future webinars. Thank you, and we hope you learn and like something from this webinar. See you on Tuesday, November 30th for the second installment of ISang ASEAN, Testing Unity in Uncertain Global Politics. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you po.
Thank you po.